All right, so I'm going to ask you a big, broad question, and you can take this where you want to. To go from garage with an idea to a company worth $1 billion, like what was that like? That sounds wild.
Yeah, it was. Look, it took an enormous amount of faith to do what we did. Because 2 years into it, I had to make a decision. Do I want to make a mortgage payment or make payroll?
Yeah.
And I opted for payroll. I ended up losing my house.
Wow.
And we just had a newborn. Brandon was just, my son was born. And that was probably the lowest point in my life when we were homeless. And, I had to live with my parents or my family members. And it was really hard because I felt ashamed at some point. I didn't want to see anyone because I felt like I was letting my wife down and my kid down. And I would wake up before anybody was up. I would leave the house if I was staying at my parents' house. And I wouldn't come back until everybody went to sleep. And my wife would, she'll stay up with me with my son just so I could play with him and be with her. And we did that until I was able to turn the business around. But for the first 13 years, Brandon, we didn't take a vacation. It was other than a weekend getaway. It was really a lot of hard work, a lot of devotion, a lot of dedication, but I believed in what I was doing.
Yeah. Did you expand different products, or was that like still your primary thing was just those tags, or did you do a lot of stuff?
So I had a lot of opportunity to do stuff, but we stayed in that space. So
Okay.
tags were our primary, and then obviously we got into the video software, we got into facial recognition software, we got into
really?
other areas of technology. But I try to stay in that. I wanted to be the master of that
Yeah.
particular technology. And we were competing against, at the time we were, a no brand name, competing with billion-dollar companies like Tyco as an example. And that was tough. And I'm going to tell you something. These big companies, when they want to buy you out and you say no, which I've said no multiple times, guess what they do? They come with some bogus BS lawsuits that they were filing. And they were literally dropping the lawsuits at the front of the courthouse.
Wow.
And there was a time, you have to hear this. This is funny. This is a federal case that that we were charged. They were alleging that we're infringing patents. It was all BS. And the day of, now that they've taken all my time and resources and enormous amount of money was spent, it was just really nothing more than a distraction. They dropped the lawsuit the day of. And then we filed a petition that told the judge that we don't want them to drop the lawsuit. And I was in California, and this lawsuit was in Ohio. The judge ordered me to appear in the court the next day. She didn't care how I got there. She said, like, I want your client here. So I finally found a flight, got in, and the judge says to me, she goes, "Sir, I want you to understand something. The plaintiff here is dropping all charges against you and your company and your attorneys are fighting it." And she goes, "You're aware that?" I says, "Yes, Your Honor, I am." And she goes, "You don't want to drop?" And I says, "No." She's like, she pulls her hair out. I'm like, "Help me understand." I said, "Your Honor, this is not the first time she'd do it, and this is so wrong. And I want the jury to hear the truth." Yeah. And the reality, Brandon, is when you're innovative and you're small, the big sharks are going to go out and get you and distract you. And I would always say, just stay focused on your course and what you believe in, whatever God put in. As long as it's done from a good place and it's done at the highest ethics, fight for it.
Yeah.
Never give up.
Yeah. That's incredible, man. Yeah. You hear about that like in movies, where it's like the big bad corporation just takes out the little guy. But like, it's almost like you don't believe it happens in real life, but it clearly happens in real life. They're like, it's just business for them. And they're just like, oh, just take out the little guy if they're not going to sell to me.